Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just want to make a brief contribution in the committee stage of this legislation. The first point I want to make is to just express my disappointment in the Minister, given that this is an issue that has had extreme public interest, and actually he's got an overwhelming majority of members of Parliament supporting it. I would have thought that it would be a better approach to the committee stages of the House during what is clearly rushed legislation. It's being put through under urgency. We haven't had any consultation. I would have thought that it would be better to have answered questions seriously, to have listened to the comments of particularly members like the co-leader of the Green Party, Materia Ture. She has 3 supplementary order papers in her name. She's put up some arguments that should be considered. This is the only opportunity we've got, and instead the Minister has really made arrogance an art form tonight. There are better ways of doing that sometimes. I know that the Minister likes that approach, but I don't think it's always the best way. So I just caution him that at times like this, when there is a lot of public interest, not just in the outcome but in the process as well, it's worth putting a little more effort in and trying to get it right. The second point I want to make is reinforcing the concern that Ian Lees-Galloway made in his earlier contribution, and that is the dismissal by the government of the use of median wage and their insistence on looking at average wage. It distorts what's happening in the real world. It undermines exactly what should be the purpose of this legislation, which is to provide a fair basis for relativity when looking at the increase in wages in members of Parliament compared to other people. And by using the average, it always looks at what is often the result of an increasing number of people on much higher wages rather than what's happening to people on lower wages. The final point that I want to make, Mr Chairman, is just to express my shock at a National Party member tonight who referred to public servants, people like firefighters and teachers and nurses and doctors, a lot of caregivers in public hospitals, some really good people actually, people that we have argued for during this debate should be getting a fair increase in their wages after having sat on the sideline and waited for the last 6 years under a national government. A national member of Parliament said they were union thugs. It's quite an inappropriate term. It was quite a surprising term for somebody who stood in Wellington Central seeking votes. It was quite a stupid thing to say, actually. But I just want to express my sorrow that that sort of terminology is used in a debate that actually isn't heated. This has been a pretty calm debate. It's been one where lots of different perspectives could have been listened to respectfully and could have been considered and answered, and they weren't. My concluding comment is to really tease the Minister for winding us up about saying how bad the 7 first drafts of this legislation were. He was accusing us of making it up. It was his own blogger and pollster, David Farrar, who alerted the public to the fact, not the insinuation, the fact that the first 7 versions of this legislation, all of which were considered and thrown out by somebody in higher sources than the Minister, probably the Honourable Chris Finlayson, I suspect, who's regarded as being the single member of Cabinet who actually reads his papers and draft legislation. All those 7 versions were thrown out, and it is widely known that the reason for them being thrown out was because instead of making sure that members of Parliament got a lower salary increase, what they actually risked doing was giving members of Parliament a bigger salary increase. Mr Speaker, I find that, Mr Chairman, I find that point amusing. I think the Minister has been suitably embarrassed by it, but he shouldn't resort to name-calling. He shouldn't accuse other members of Parliament of making things up, which is what he did. We all know that it's true. He may not have ever have read that earlier legislation, and that's why perhaps he's remaining in ignorant bliss. I'll just return to the first point I made. This is a bill we support. It could have been proceeded with tonight with a little more dignity, and I regret it wasn't.
James.